I'm Matt Ebert. I turned one collision repair shop into a multi-billion-dollar business called Crash Champions. Now I'm sitting down with people who have also built great things so you can build something of your own.
All right. Today's guest that is crashing the pod is Peter Cuneo.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So Peter's been known for being a turnaround CEO. He's most famous for being the CEO of Marvel. He was named CEO in 1999, shortly after they filed bankruptcy.
Yep.
Then in 2009, they sold to Disney for $4.5 billion. Billion with a B.
With a B. In 2009 money.
Is that a lot of money in 2009?
That's a lot of money today, Danny. $1 billion is a lot of money.
But even in 2009?
Definitely 2009, but it's a lot of money. Like, here, to illustrate it, let's compare it to $1 million.
Okay.
And I'll illustrate it this way. How long do you think 1 million seconds is? Besides 1 million seconds, how long do you think it is?
I have no idea.
Okay. It's a little over 11 days.
Okay. 11 days.
11 days.
Million
seconds. 1 million seconds. How long would you guess 1 billion seconds is?
30 days?
Over 31 years.
Wait.
That's how big a billion is compared to 1 million. 11 days compared to almost 32 years.
Yeah.
Right? We can get a sense of that.
So
$1 billion is a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
So he sold for 4.5 of those billion.
Yeah,
that's great.
It's good work. And so being known as a turnaround CEO, you've had some experience with turning around a company, right?
Yeah, we've had our experience with that. It's tough, like, from buying a bankrupt company and integrating it and turning it around. It's a big battle.
What was the biggest takeaway from it? Or what did you learn out of it?
It's always surprises, bad surprises. It's more broken than you think. Yeah, it's
never is what it seems, I guess.
It's going to be some more.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, I'm looking forward to your conversation with Peter.
Me too. This is PodCrash. Before we maybe get into some of your background, you've got a new book out. We're looking at it right here in the middle of the table. Superhero Leadership, 28 Ways to Lead with Courage, Strength, and Compassion. Tell us about it. Why 28?
Well, actually, I've been in leadership positions in my life for many, many decades. And this really started when I was CEO of Marvel Entertainment.
Okay.
Over 20 years ago. And I was asked to give a speech on leadership by a large group. And in thinking about what am I going to talk about, because I had not done this before, I actually got on a plane. It's an 11-hour flight nonstop to China from New York City.
Okay.
And I started thinking about my whole life, what principles did I think I'd learned? And actually, in 9 hours, came up with 28 essentials. And I've made some changes over the last 20 years, of course, but not many. And so today, the reason for the book is I'm very concerned about this status of leadership in the world. I profess that we have less good leadership in the world than maybe ever in human history. I'm also equally concerned about the fact that I believe young people are not learning leadership. The question is, why not? And what can we do about it? So this book is part of my quest, if you will, to talk about leadership and what I think I've learned. And the book is aimed at people who are interested in the subject of leadership, which is most human beings, people who want to become better leaders or aspire to leadership, and so on. So I don't want to say it's a Bible. It's not the right word, but it's certainly something that I think will resonate, with other people.
I was super excited to talk to you today because that resonates with me. I agree. Like there's like a vacuum almost of leadership today, and love to see you communicating the lessons that you learned to help others. If I glance at these, which I got to do when we talked, they all are great. Do you have a favorite?
I do not have a favorite. I'm often asked, what's the most important of the 28? And the answer is there is no most important.
Okay.
They're all important. They're all, no one exists on earth that's going to get a grade of A on every one. We're all human beings. And I tell people some of those, even after 20 years, I give myself a C and I'm happy to get a C.
Even though they're your leadership principles, it's not your strength.
That's right. I know I have certain failings, flaws, like any human being, which I'm always fighting, and so on and so forth. But I will tell you what is the hardest one to do, because that I often get that question.
Okay.
And that is, I think it's number 18. But
notice I got to put on the glasses.
Yeah, that's okay. But basically, it talks about having the emotional maturity to understand that to be an effective leader, you're going to upset and be unpopular with other people because you have to make change. Really, my definition of leadership is the courage to make change. And
good definition.
You're going to make change can upset a lot of people. Even good change upsets people sometimes. Mm-hmm. And you have to be comfortable with the idea that there'll be people who will never really like you very much. I still get calls every once in a while from friends who say, Peter, do you know John Smith, or Jane Doe? I just met him or her, and they don't like you very much. And I said, yeah, I figured that because I had to fire them years ago, and, what have you. But you're just going to have to live with that. I'm not suggesting to be cruel or abusive in any way as a leader, but just accept that, you're going to have to be comfortable with, because if you don't make the change, you're going to fail.
Yeah, and no change is going to bring everybody's
Everyone
approval.
loses.
Yeah,
everyone hates you.
even if it's the greatest thing in the world and it's better for them, it's going to make it so much faster, so much easier.
Yeah, I have the experience often offering people really nice promotions and being turned down because they didn't want the responsibility of leadership, because they knew in their hearts they were going to have to make other people unhappy, and most human beings would rather just be liked by everybody, and go do their thing every day. So most human beings actually do not aspire to leadership. They're interested in leadership for sure. Mm-hmm. Okay, but it's for that reason. It's something that in my turnarounds, I've done 7 turnarounds of distressed businesses. I had to cope with that every day.
Yeah, there's one in here that because of love of people, so to speak, like this, be ruthless when called for. That's when I pointed out, like, I still work on that one because it's difficult sometimes. If you like the people, the calls you got to make sometimes are hard.
Yeah. I actually wrote that to talk about, though, really bad people. Okay. Yep. Because there are people who just don't want to make the hard decisions on people and will put up with anything. And I noticed, if you look at what I wrote afterwards on that, I'm talking about sexual harassment. I'm talking about theft. I'm talking about.
Then it actually gets easy to be ruthless.
Oh yeah,
it actually gets really
easy. But
then.
There's certain people you're just going to have to pull the plug on, and there's no if or but with regard to those people.
Yeah,
they are a cancer and they need to go.
Agree. So maybe a little background, if we could. You gave us little hints already. Managed 7 turnarounds. Marvel's the one you're most famous for. You said you had an adventurer gene. I've heard you say that. Tell me about that. What does that mean?
Well, I'm a risk taker.
Okay.
I don't think anyone is born really with an adventurer gene. I think it's how you're raised when you're young has a certain effect on you. And in my case, my parents and my grandparents were all adventurers. My grandparents were all immigrants. They came from Italy. They came from Sweden. They came from Scotland.
Okay.
I'm actually half MacLeod from Scotland, but my last name is Cuneo.
Yes.
Which is Italian. There's a city and a province in northern Italy, Cuneo. And so some of them didn't speak English, and they made that adventure coming to a new country with not knowing anyone else, and they survived.
Awesome.
They survived and did fine. A little known fact is that many of the immigrants, we talk about U.S. being a country of immigrants, which we are, but many went back
Okay.
because they couldn't cope. You'd be surprised if you saw the numbers. They just couldn't cope.
Gave it a try and said, I'm going to go back. I believe that.
I'm
Yeah.
going to go back. I saw once that 40% of Italians that immigrated went back to Italy. I don't know if that's accurate, but I was very surprised that it was that much.
I wouldn't have guessed that either, but thinking about it, there's obviously some that would have went back.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. So my grandparents all did fine. They got through the Depression. They were middle class. They worked hard. They didn't do desk jobs. They were all out there in different occupations. My mother and father, similar situation. My father was, as a young man growing up in Manhattan, in New York City. He was Boy Scout of the Year at age 13.
Okay.
He went to Stuyvesant High School, which was the best academic high school, public high school in New York, might still be. He was all-city basketball player for 3 years. He went to the University of North Carolina, and in 1940, they won the unofficial national championship. There was no March Madness back then. Mm-hmm. He was the sixth man on the team. My father was a lieutenant in New York City Fire Department, and his firehouse was a Chinatown in Manhattan. A lot of bad fires, those types of buildings, and so on. He was a Navy officer in World War II in the South Pacific and in the Korean War. So I grew up. And my mother was an EMT for 30 years.
Okay.
The last 10 years, physically, she couldn't do it anymore. So she was a dispatcher. But this is the model that I grew up with, was people that get out there, people that take risks, people that give back to others. And when I was young, was I thinking that this is what I'm learning? No, of course not. I didn't. But I started, in a way, learning leadership when I was 8 years old, and I'll explain. One of the attributes, and if you go to petercuneo.com, there's a lot of things on leadership on there.
Okay.
But I do talk about some of the attributes also of great leaders. And one is that they're not afraid of being thrown into alien situations, alien environments. And I have to always say that by alien in this case, I don't mean bad, I mean different.
Yep.
And they run at problems. They don't hope the problems go away. They don't contemplate a problem for a month. They go right at the problems when they know about them. Alien environments, we all, as humans, face these occasionally. It might be things we did ourselves. Oh, I have a job in Chicago. Well, I just took a job in London, and
it's going to be a different environment.
But I chose to do that. Okay. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's not so good. It's a business thing that suddenly crops up. Oh, my competitor has a new technology. They might blow me out of the water. My products. What am I going to do?
Yep.
Or unfortunately, it could be a health situation that occurs. But good leaders are very comfortable. And I'm very comfortable. This is something I realized a long time ago, coping with unforeseen, new events.
You alluded to something when you were 8.
Yeah. So when I was 8 years old, my father was called up to go into back into the Navy as Navy officer in the Korean War.
Okay.
So in a 2-year period, we went from New York City, where I was growing up, first to Pensacola, Florida, then to Bremerton, Washington, which is where there was a mothball fleet. My father was taking a carrier from World War II out of mothballs. Bremerton is across the Sound from Seattle.
Okay.
Then we went to San Diego, which was big Navy town. Then the war was over, but he was asked to stay in for another year. And we went to Philadelphia. He was in Philadelphia Naval Shipyard.
Man, huh?
And then for a year. And then, so I did the 4th grade in San Diego, the 5th grade outside of Philadelphia. But it's funny if you think about it. I went to all 4 corners of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Florida, state of Washington, Southern California, Philadelphia, and then back to home in New York City again. And I became very comfortable, actually liked the change. I had to make friends in every location, 4 locations in 2 years. I don't remember it being difficult. And I coped, and I liked it. So I was always interested in what's over the next hill.
Yeah, that's
Because
not
it's-
a normal childhood experience.
No, not at all.
Right.
But again, I was thrown into, call it alien environments.
Yep.
Okay. But my family coped, my parents coped, I coped, and so on. So that's, in a sense, how I got started on leadership at age 8.
That's great.
I didn't even know there was a word called leadership or what it really meant. But looking back in terms of my personality and how I was shaped as a young kid, that was a big deal.
So any big mistakes when you were a young person then, or did that make you, did that make everything adventurous and trouble-free, or?
Pretty much. I had no big mistakes.
Yeah.
I was just growing up. I'm sure I made some mistakes. I really don't remember them. It was more about just learning new environments and learning to enjoy that challenge. Even I was 10 years old when I came back to New York City.
Learning those skills as a young person, where do you feel though in life you really started to emerge as a leader? Was that in the Navy for you?
Yes, absolutely. So I had started to do a few things in high school and in college in terms of student leadership, but really the big leap for me was going to Vietnam. So I had graduated with a degree in ceramic engineering from a school called Alfred University, upstate New York. Alfred is #1 school in the world for ceramic technology, science, and art, by the way. And my degree was in glass science. Most people don't think of glass as a ceramic, but it's the largest ceramic industry in the world. And so then I worked in a fiberglass factory for a year.
Okay.
After I graduated. But again, that can't sit around at a desk thing was getting me. And I volunteered, even though I had a job deferment. I didn't have to go to the war. I volunteered. Part of it was the sense of adventure. Pretty naive, actually, looking back in that regard. It was going to be more than an adventure.
A little bit more than adventure.
But I think I saw too many John Wayne movies when I was growing up,
Okay.
World War II movies. But also because my father had been a Navy officer in 2 wars.
Okay.
And so, so I went to officer candidate school. And in 4 months, I was an officer because during the wars, the military, not just the Navy, all of the military needs more officers, junior officers. And then you would need in peacetime. And so I wasn't taken as seriously as people who went to Annapolis for 4 years.
Okay.
So which is fine. I expected that, and that was
You went through
appropriate.
the
That was
crash course,
appropriate.
you didn't put in the
Yeah,
time.
exactly. No, exactly. That was appropriate.
Yeah.
And so no problem. Yeah, of course, I was on a guided missile destroyer. I did 2 tours in the Vietnam War. My ship, I was first damage control officer, and then first tour, second tour, I was communications officer. But more importantly, in the Navy, those are your functional jobs. Officers have other jobs. And my biggest job was not those. It was learning to drive the ship.
Okay.
Because, this is not the age of sail. Captains don't give the orders anymore to the engine order telegraph or to the helmsman on what course to take. You have someone on the bridge called the officer of the deck, and they actually drive the ship. The captain is far too busy.
Okay.
Far too busy.
Learned something new today.
Oh, yeah. And so, but of course, to learn to drive, in my ship's case, a ship that is 20,000 metric tons, 417 feet long, 60 feet wide, 300 sailors and 20 officers, takes time and practice. You don't just suddenly go on.
You're not turning that on a dime, are you?
Oh, not at all. So I was not qualified as an officer of the deck on my first tour, but I was on the second tour. And so I had the responsibility, literally, for the entire ship when I was driving the ship. And yeah, the captain was on the bridge usually with me and so on, doing other things, but no question. And then you're in a war in a combat zone. And so a lot of responsibility. And when you're given a lot of responsibility, you naturally learn about leadership. But I also learned a great deal of leadership in the Navy from senior officers. I was actually blessed to serve under some great senior officers on the ship, and also learned a lot from senior enlisted men.
Okay.
The Navy chiefs. Listen, I didn't know anything when I showed up on the ship at first, okay? I'd literally go to the chief who reported to me, who had been in the Navy 20 years. Chief, what do I do now? Even though he reported to me, I was technically his boss because I was an officer and he wasn't. I wasn't going to kid anybody. I was not going to pretend I suddenly could be superhuman and know what to do. So for the first 6 months, I did a lot of asking the chiefs, what do I do now?
But that's okay.
That's part of the process. It's normal.
Way better than acting like you know something you don't.
Well, and that gets into leadership in organizations. How many weak leaders have we run into who want everybody to think they're omnipotent and perfect and they can know everything, and even walking into a whole new situation, they think it's a show of weakness if they don't act like they're super cool and above it all. That's my first tip off, by the way, when I meet people like that. I know they're not going to be successful. So it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to admit your mistakes. One of my 28 essentials comes from an incident that happened in the Navy, which, if we have time, I'll mention some of the details to you.
Sure.
But it talks about be honest, be human, and admit your mistakes. And so I learned to admit my mistakes, and it wasn't terrible when the following happened. So on my first tour, it's the mid-watch. Midnight watch on a ship is midnight to 4 a.m. I'm still a junior officer. I'm not doing anything but watching what goes on. That's my assignment. Just watch and learn. Our assignment at that time was called plane guarding for carriers. When carriers launch or recover aircraft, they want to have a destroyer 1 nautical mile in front. Nautical mile is 2,000 yards. And 1 nautical mile in arrears, in trail, in case the planes go in the water.
Okay.
You're lifeguard duty. You're on lifeguard duty, basically. And so, and Navy carriers conduct operations in the middle of the night as well as during daytime. Maybe a little less, but they're doing it.
Yep.
And in Vietnam, because these planes had been bombing or fighting the MiGs over North Vietnam, some of them come back injured, hit, damaged, but they want to get back to the ship. They do not want to go down on land and end up in the Hanoi Hilton. They don't want to go. They'd rather get to the ocean. It's called feet wet, but even crashing in the ocean is very dangerous. So they want to get back to the ship if they can. But they're wounded. So when flight operations are not going on, the ships kind of float around at very low speed, two destroyers and the carrier, and so on. And then when the carrier starts operations, they'll tell the destroyers to take one to go in front, one to go in back, and the carrier will turn into the wind at flank speed. Flank speed is top speed. For back then, Navy carriers could do 35 miles an hour top speed. And if you're going into a 15-mile-an-hour wind, that's 50-mile-an-hour wind that the planes are taking off.
Does that create a lot of lift for them? Is that why they do that?
Yes, exactly right. And landing, same thing. You land tail down, as you know. Okay, so you want that lift.
Yeah, nose down wouldn't be good.
No.
I don't know how to fly, but that makes sense.
So the captain is on the bridge, but he's exhausted. He's asleep.
Okay.
Which is common. He's on the bridge in combat zone the whole time, basically, but he's exhausted. So he's sleeping. And the order comes, and the officer of the deck, who's very highly qualified guy, does a little calculation, and he gives speed and the direction we need to go to get in position. In this case, it's behind the carrier. And it's a relative motion calculation because the carrier is not sitting there. It's moving. Mm-hmm. So you're, trying to look ahead. And
where do you got to be when he gets to here?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You want to be behind him as fast as you can. Okay, he's going in this direction at his top speed. You're going to go your top speed, but what direction do you want to set? And so Captain wakes up. He does his calculation, and he thinks he screws it up, and he changes the orders to the helmsman and so on. And a minute later, we're about to cut the other destroyer in half.
That'd be a problem.
Believe it or not. The only time in my Navy career I heard hard right rudder. Hard rudder is you hear full rudder. You don't hear hard rudder. And so we end up just passing close aboard, 50 yards apart, these two destroyers close to each other. But we managed to avoid it. We get it. Yeah. So there's no secrets on this ship. The ship is a little community. So the next day, the crew is saying, can we trust this captain? Is he going to get us killed? That's what can happen here. And the captain did something amazing. He called all the officers who were not on watch to the officers' mess, which is the dining room for the officers, to start a meeting. And he got up and he said, last night I made a mistake. I want to spend the next hour analyzing every detail of what went on so it can never happen again. And I, as just an observer, could see the body language of these other officers go from, essentially, is he going to get us killed too? We're going to die for this guy because he cares more about us than his career, because he's going to get written up in the log for this. Mm-hmm. Okay? I don't know if it ever got written up or not. But I learned that in that hour, I learned, you know what? It's okay. And by the way, that captain, many years later, was promoted to Rear Admiral. So I know that his leadership qualities were recognized by the Navy. So I have no problem telling you I screwed up. Let's fix it. What really matters is once we know it's a problem, we're going to fix it right now. Mm-hmm. I blew it. And in turnarounds, you're going to make a lot of decisions almost every day. Some are going to be wrong. It just is. Sometimes you don't have enough information. Sometimes your judgment's just not great. But the real thing is, okay, we made a mistake. We're not going to debate it. Let's get on it right now. How do we fix it?
So that is something probably pretty unique. I don't know how many men or women in the world can say they manage 7 turnarounds. So you must have loved it a little bit, or gravitated toward it, or people knew you were good at it, so they pursued you to come turn theirs around. But
you know what? Actually, I didn't have any sense. I was thrown into the first one.
Okay.
By my boss. It was the smallest of all of them, but it was an international business, and I was pursuing this classic big corporate financial career. And all of a sudden, I have responsibility now for this international division of a business, and they're in trouble. And I'm like, really, honestly, I was probably depressed for the first 6 months. Not clinically depressed, but I was down. Mm-hmm. What do I know about turnarounds? What do I know? I don't know anything about this. And after 6 months, we started to get some really good results. You could see we were improving. And I realized, thinking about it, it was about leadership, that the past leadership had been pretty poor for a lot of ways. And my approach was very different. And one of the things I learned on that first turnaround, and it turned out to be true on all my turnarounds, one of the nice things about it is you're going to discover people in the organization that were never allowed to flourish by the senior leadership in the past. And once you let them have, some leeway, they're like, oh my goodness, these people are really good. But they were never asked for their opinion. They were never asked to have vision. They were never asked, just keep your nose down to the table and do that job we define for you day after day. And suddenly you discover, and yes, you're going to bring in some other people as well. But so what happened with me was that ended up very well. And then the company I was working for, Bristol Myers, said that this is great. Here's a bigger turnaround, another division.
Okay.
And then by then I was addicted to turnarounds.
Because of seeing the bad go to good?
And loving working with people, seeing the success. Look, we all love to have success.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing, I mentioned before, I love to work with a diversity of people. I think that's the strongest group you can put together because you have many different outlooks and opinions that you can measure and weigh. Human beings really, fundamentally, we all want to be seen. We want to be noticed. We want to be heard.
Okay.
We want people to be interested in what we think. Even if our opinion is 180 degrees out from the final decision, my experience is most human beings are okay as long as they felt you took them seriously and you valued them. We all want to be valued.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's something I learned also. Particularly, I think I knew it a little before, but I really learned it on those first couple of turnarounds.
So what you saw, what I'm hearing is it was leadership every time. Because you weren't the expert in all these businesses. You couldn't have been.
Correct. I would tell you that these were all I've been mostly in creative businesses.
Okay.
Not everyone was creative. Some were manufacturing consumer products, but still there's advertising. There's what Marvel, of course, was completely creative. Movies, comic books, what have you. And so leadership, I don't want to say it counts for more in a creative environment rather than a technical environment. But, leadership has a great effect on the organization and can go bad quickly, but also can go well quickly. Mm-hmm. If your problem in doing a turnaround is somebody has a new technology that's going to obsolete your technology, that's a different challenge. I never had one of those challenges.
Okay.
I have to be honest. It was always getting people to be creative, for them to understand that no idea was a crazy idea. We wanted to consider virtually anything, thinking out of the box. At Marvel, our culture became changing the rules of the game. Everything we did was going to be different from everyone else. We made movies differently. We've made comic books published differently. We wrote them differently. It was all changed the rules of the game. And that's why we were so successful.
Because you started to do it different than they had been doing it in the past. Well, obviously what they were doing in the past wasn't working.
Well, not just the people that were there before, but I'm talking about the industry.
Okay.
Other competitors. We wouldn't do it like them either.
So I've talked to some before, and that's probably an advantage that comes from an outsider because you don't have any bias to how the industry does it, and you don't have any married to the old ways because you don't even know. It's kind of an advantage.
And, I was comfortable not being the guy who wanted everybody to think I can just parachute in and be an expert on all these things and make judgments. Mm-hmm. I read scripts for the movies. I never made a single change. I didn't feel I was qualified. And I actually found a lot of good people already there.
Okay.
I'm sure, we added some people, of course, but there were people who seemed to me to really know what they were doing. I read almost all the comic books, but I only read them after they were published. Come on. Marvel had 4,700 characters when I arrived. I didn't know anything about any of them, really.
That's a lot of characters.
I knew vaguely something about Spider-Man and the Hulk, but that's it. I didn't know the essence of these characters. I wasn't qualified to make a change in a story or something about them.
Did you have to go find different people that did, or
well, we had a lot of
honestly,
we had a lot of good people there already, but because Marvel had been in bankruptcy, we had lost a lot of talent because good people could go somewhere else, and they did. So we spent a lot of time, particularly in comic books, convincing great people, great writers, great illustrators, to come back to Marvel and a lot of them felt they had been abused by Marvel in the past. So I was the new guy, but I hired some new people to run the comic book business, and really they get the credit for getting the talent to come back.
So I can relate to this because we bought a business bigger than us a few years back out of bankruptcy, and exactly those things. Like a lot of the good people were ran off. It was more broken than I thought. So therefore a lot harder than I expected. When you go in, is there a pattern to how you would go about things that you applied over and over?
You know, that's a good question. I get it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The answer is no. There's no, you'll see another one of my essentials is never think you've seen it all before. And that means that's the cause for, I think, leadership failure. Every situation actually is different.
Yeah.
And I had learned, we talked about it earlier, to sit back and watch. And that was okay. And probably I was, for some things, I didn't need to sit back. I had a financial background. I could attack our financial situation, which was very poor when I came to the company. I had some knowledge of leadership, so licensing, I could get involved in the licensing of what we were doing deeply. So it wasn't that I was sitting around doing nothing, but when it came to making a movie or comic books, I was learning for the first 6 months. And
so
I
curiosity first.
Yeah. Well, it would just be ridiculously audacious on my part to make some change in some movie, knowing nothing about how to make a movie, I really didn't understand the true essence of the characters. I did eventually.
Okay.
But it was just ridiculous, arrogant. It never occurred to me.
Was Marvel the hardest one? Like, that's the one you're most known for. Was it the hardest one you did?
This is going to sound funny, but I think they were all hard. Because I chose, thrown in and then chose to go to the biggest challenges where radical surgery was needed in all of them. There are other turnarounds that you can do less. You know, I talk about change in an organization. I sometimes talk about the pebble, the rock, and the boulder. So in my head, when I look at making change in an organization, I always had to think about pebbles, rocks, and boulders. Pebbles, you throw in the pond, they make a little ripple. It's gone very quickly. Rock makes a bigger splash, but the ripple doesn't get to the shoreline. Boulder falls in, there's a big wave, hits the shoreline hard. And think about changes that you find you have to make in an organization, and they can fall into those categories.
Mm-hmm.
So at Marvel, a pebble would have been, we changed to offices. We moved 10 blocks from one office to another. It was a little disruptive moving, but no one had to change where they lived to continue to come to the office and what have you. And after a month in the new office, everyone forgot we even moved.
Yep.
Okay, that's a pebble. A rock could be, we got a new product that we want to get out. Okay, and there's going to be multiple functions involved in that, getting that new product, and hopefully it'll be successful. That's a rock. A boulder is AI. A boulder is merging with another company. A boulder is buying another company bigger than you are out of bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. I know what you went through, okay? And so on. And here's the thing you have to really think about. You can't throw pebbles, rocks, and boulders in the pond at the same time.
I think I tried. But yeah.
Okay, what happens is those ripples interact with each other and you have chaos in the pond.
Yep.
Total chaos. So you have to think through, and this is something a lot of leaders miss. You have to make the changes, but you have to figure out when they all fit timing-wise. Mm-hmm. Because many changes, even though it's a change, you're changing your financial organization, but that will impact the whole company in some ways.
Yes.
And if someone else is making, customer service is making a change, well, they may interact with each other not well to do the changes at the same time. That's my point. To really think about that. And so on. So but I had that challenge, if you will, with all 7 turnarounds.
Did you find, one thing I've tried to do with change is change once. Like if you're going to change something, change it once and get it right. But I didn't succeed that often. Usually there was a change and then, from bad to good and then to to the great. But
but
was that just my experience, or?
Oh, no. As I was talking about, you're going to make a lot of changes.
Yeah.
Some are not going to be right. You're going to make decisions. Most of them are about change, basically, and some will be wrong. But the test for a really good leader is, okay, I blew it. I made the mistake. Let's go fix it right now. That's the test. You shouldn't beat yourself up for not batting 1,000 on change. No one does. No one.
The great thing in a turnaround situation, I guess you could go all the way down, but it's kind of in a place where there's nowhere to go but up. So that I view life a lot of time and business, it's a roller coaster at times. And I almost am most comfortable coming off the bottom, because on the way down, you don't know where the bottom is coming off. And at the top, I'm always nervous. Okay, what's going to go wrong? Where's it going to fall out? So it's that coming out of the bottom where I always feel the most comfortable, to be honest.
Yeah.
Most optimistic there.
Yeah,
most feel like you're in control of where you're going.
No, sure. I think that look, these turnarounds, or going into an organization, and it doesn't have to be business. I mean, it could be the military. It could be education. It could be some religious organization. I'm not talking about just business here. If you're a leader, you're going to have to make some change. Hopefully it's all pebbles.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, life isn't that sweet. Okay. So, so I just think there's a lot of stress. And I warn people. Harvard Business School wrote a case about Marvel. The first paragraph says Peter Cuneo is sitting at his desk wondering what the strategy for Marvel should be, in the coming years. I'm paraphrasing here.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of MBA programs invited me to go to class and talk about Marvel and what actually happened and change. And I found a lot of the students initially thought doing turnarounds was very sexy. It's really cool, you can make a lot of money if you're successful, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
But and so on. But I would tell them, but let's role play here a little bit. You just took over manufacturing, and now I'm telling you, as a CEO, you got to go close a factory in Nebraska in a little town, and 50% of the jobs in the town are all in this factory, and they're unionized, and they know you're coming, and they're afraid you're going to shut them down. You got to do that. That's not fun. That's stressful as heck.
Yeah.
Okay. There's going to be a lot of stress when you're working in a turnaround. Be prepared. That's what my point.
So you found getting the courage to do that stuff. You were able to do it.
Well, yeah. You know why? I think, again, because it was for the greater good. If I didn't do it, everybody was done.
Yeah. That's what makes the decisions easy, right?
And one of the things I had to do in a couple of places was move manufacturing from the United States to Asia. Okay, which may be very unpopular, but the reality was this. The cost to make the product was 20% of what it cost in the United States. My competition was already over there.
Doing it over there.
And retailers were saying, Peter, I can't keep your product. I can't keep buying it. It's too expensive. So what am I supposed to do? Tank the whole company? No. So we did move, and some people lost their jobs in manufacturing. But we had to save. We saved the company by doing that. And so on and so forth. So there's some bad things that, you just have to do no matter what.
Maybe you could take a few minutes. I want to ask, when you do go and tell the Marvel story, because you've been asked to do that hundreds, thousands of times probably, how would you run through the highlights of what happened there and how you got it right?
Well, I would encourage your audience to tune into the Marvel Mindset. It's my podcast that answers that question, except it's 10 episodes, 15 minutes each. So you're gonna spend, if you listen to only 2.5 hours for the answer to that question.
And you put it out there for us.
It's out there now.
Oh, that's
great. It's out there now. Marvel Mindset and so on. But I will mention one thing that I think was very important on all my turnarounds, and that is the first thing you really have to look at is the value system the culture of the company that you or the organization that you're going into, because I always found the culture was wrong, misaligned. Now, by culture, I'm referring to kind of two things. The first is how you treat your employees, how you view
Very important.
the people, but it's also how you treat people that are important to you outside the company, how you treat your suppliers, how you treat your auditors, how you treat your customers, your retailers, if you're in the retail business, how you treat, we can go on and on, how you viewed them. Very important. The second part is understanding, okay, what do you really have to do well? What are the things that you have to do well? And invariably, the things that really these organizations needed to do well, they didn't think they needed to do well. They were working on other stuff. Example, new products. So if new products, I've mentioned new products before, need to be 25% of your sales every year, you should have your best people in new products.
Yep.
And yet you have your worst people in new products. How could that happen? It'd take a while to explain how that happened, but the point is that's the culture's dead wrong. You wouldn't believe how many of these turnarounds where I went in and the culture included, well, we can sell our customers anything.
So then you're not giving a very good product.
I mean,
of course.
Let me tell you a quick story here. And you'll be able to figure out who I'm talking about, but I won't mention the name, but a very large retailer, mass retailer, is my biggest customer. I'm in the job a month. That head of sales comes to me and says, we have a problem with so-and-so. What's the problem? Well, they don't like our prices. We're getting price competition for some of our products that are like, there's nothing special about them. So, okay, we'll I'm not worried about coping with that. We'll figure it out. He doesn't leave my office. I said, is there something else? Yes. Our quality isn't so good. They're getting returns on some of our products at very high levels. It's customers saying the products don't work. I'm going, so, I'm at this point, I'm starting to sweat a little. But okay, I'll go, I'm planning already in my head. I'm going to go see the head buyers there. And, we'll work it out. Still doesn't leave.
There's more to tell.
He says, so they're running a big national ad for a particular product. It's our product. We told them we had enough inventory to support it. We found out there's a flaw in the inventory system. We only have half the inventory, we told them. They're not going to be happy when we tell them they're running an ad, all that expense in 2,000 stores.
Did you tell them, don't worry, half the product's coming back anyway, you can sell it again? Was that the solution?
I'm like, oh my Lord, oh my Lord. And this went back to that. It's a long story. I don't think we have time, but there was a happy ending, but it was down the road. It wasn't right away. But you ask yourself, how can an organization do that? I mean, it's right. I mean, it's so obvious. And if they had that problem with the big guy, they had to have similar problems with other customers.
Yeah, I've narrowed down our business to like 5 things we have to concentrate on, and customers being happy is one of them.
Okay.
Like it's
yes, customer service.
You have to make sure that happens.
Right. No, yeah. You know how many businesses don't understand how important customer service is, even today?
It's interesting how they survive that way.
Most of the people I deal with, just as a consumer in my private life, they always have numbers that I can talk to a human being. And get my problem solved or get my question answered. And I just avoid the ones where I'm talking to a bot.
Yeah, people need to know you care.
Really. Yeah. I don't mind talking to someone who's in the Philippines. If they can answer my question, I don't care. That's fine. But
you'd rather the person than the bot.
Yeah.
No matter where the geography.
Yeah.
So you mentioned something to me that you feel pretty strongly about, and that is young people today and the leadership qualities that they're learning or not learning. Maybe it's more the problem. Maybe we can spend a few minutes on that.
Sure.
you think it's a real problem?
I do think it's a real problem, and we need young people because we're lacking in good leadership in the world in general, quite badly, in my opinion. We need them to eventually, grow up and take over, but they have to be equipped to be good leaders. And the feedback I'm getting constantly from people that are higher up in different organizations about the performance or the attitudes of the young people today is pretty distressing. And so part of this book is aimed at young people, the book's 190 pages. It's not that long.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling a lot of stories, including some I just mentioned here. But learn from what I think I've learned. But in the end, you really learn most of leadership from dealing directly, face to face with other human beings.
Okay.
You need to have interactions, personal life, private life. The more diverse, the better. Diversity in geography, moving around is very helpful. Experiencing different cultures.
And this is because you learn to cope and you learn to interact and communicate.
Exactly. You learn to understand how to deal with other people.
Mm-hmm.
One of the lost arts I talk about also, and I do have a note on this, is communications. Communications, particularly in leadership, is a lost art. Good communications are a combination of an art and a science, but the art part is disappearing. I can read people's body language almost immediately face to face.
Yes.
Even the subtle parts. But I've been at it a long time. And I'm not thinking I'm reading your body language, just looking at you. It's just my brain is processing it.
Yeah.
Right. But, but it's only because I've had experiences with God knows how many people over the years, very different people, and learn how to convince them to my way of thinking or, to change a culture, the value system of an organization, whatever. I think it's super important. But the young people are not getting face-to-face experiences. They're on a cell phone. They're on a tablet. Their parents are making all the decisions for them. Okay, they are not learning their strengths and their weaknesses. We all have weaknesses. We're human by definition. You're better knowing what your weaknesses are than not knowing, because you can work on them.
Yeah. And you can run with your strengths.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Lead with your strengths, sure. But sometimes people can turn weaknesses into strengths. There's no doubt about it.
But that ability to communicate, like I say, two qualities we need in leaders are ability to communicate and sense of urgency. And you're saying that for young people today, they're not, because of because of the phone, because of not interacting, they're not learning the communication skills they need to effectively lead later in life.
Yeah, that's right. They're not out there in the real world. Again, overparenting is a problem. COVID was a problem, particularly for young people, because they had talk about not being out in the world. That they went.
Everybody was told to stay
4 or 5
home.
years at home, no school.
Yeah.
In many cases, or school at home or whatever.
So how does that show up?
It's pretty easy to see. I can interview somebody who's 21 years old and read it right away. And when I interview, I'm always getting at how they were raised. Just tell me about life, where you're from. What I ask about.
And you would rather hear
experience.
My mom and dad left me alone. I almost died 3 times, and rather than my mom and dad did everything perfect.
What, honestly, lately what's happening, the people from some state university come across better than the ones from the Ivy League.
Okay. They weren't pampered as much.
They were out there. They grew up in a different environment. They have a much better clutch, if you will, on the real world. And so
I think you have on your website some suggestions for young people too, right? Did you tell me about that?
Yeah. So I have 15 suggestions starting at age 5.
Okay.
And I defined young people as age 5 to age 30. And you can go to petercuneo.com and see the list. Okay. And most of them are face-to-face experiences. So team sports are great.
Okay.
Performing arts is a team sport. I recommend that. Study abroad won't surprise anybody.
What if I'm terrible at sports, and what if I can't act or dance?
Some of the other things that I recommend are becoming an expert in something as a young person.
Okay.
Now, if you're age 5, you can be an expert on dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Legos, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
But be an expert. I have it gives people a sense of power, the sense of being an expert, getting in depth. Kids today never go below the surface on any subject. If they have to, they have the internet to just plug in. They never read a book, unfortunately, on a subject. It's all cosmetic.
Interesting.
Okay, but they're trained. It's not their fault. They're good. They're good kids. The parents are well-meaning, but it's all cosmetic. It's all. Yeah, I just have to say it's shallow. They're shallow, and because they're trained not to be to be shallow. In effect, they're not interesting. They've never gone deep on anything, and I recommend going at any age, go deep.
Probably leads to, I think, what you describe as not very thick skin too, right?
Well, because of overparenting, and well-meaning parents think that their kids should grow up never having a negative thought about themselves. Well, so you're not going to learn your weaknesses.
Yep.
Period. Okay.
You won't take feedback very well either, right?
No. You'll be shocked at the feedback, actually.
Yeah.
And so, okay, what do I want to get into? I mean, they're just, again, not prepared for the real world. They're not in the real world. They get bullied on the internet, and God, they believe this stuff people would never say to your face. And they believe and the first negative thing they hear is usually on the internet from other kids, and they're really bothered by it. In some cases, terribly, to commit suicide. That's how bad it is.
Oh, wow.
And so they've never learned this is BS and you shouldn't take it seriously. They have no sense. They believe everything they see on the internet, on streaming, on whatever form of media that they're absorbing. They think it's all real when most of it is actually not real.
Yeah. Or definitely one-sided.
Yeah, that's correct. They have no judgment to make a judgment about this is silly stuff. And with AI, it's getting worse because the stuff that's being put now.
And the AI is just going to tell them what to think.
AI is pretty good. Some people are actually fooled by the AI, thinking to this reporter, a well-known national reporter, is on AI. It's not them. The only thing moving is their face, their mouth. It's so easy to spot if you look for it. But they're saying stuff, breaking news, and it's actually no breaking news. No story. It's made up.
Well, those suggestions are all going to be really helpful if followed.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit, like you're well past where you could retire. Is it you wanting to help others and see some improved leadership? Is that what keeps you going?
Yeah, I think
you're still working pretty hard at.
Yeah, I'm still working 24/7 at my very advanced age, and I love what I do. I feel wanted and needed. I'm not perfect, and that's fine. I still make mistakes occasionally, but I'm stimulated on a lot of different levels.
Well, you got a great message, and I can't wait to read the book. And I did glance at some of it, and it looks really good.
Well, thank you very much.
We're all about championing people here. And so I have a closing question for you. Given the opportunity, someone in your life, past or present, that you would want to champion, and why?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot. I'm on the board of the National Archives Foundation in Washington. I've been on the board for 18 years.
Well, that's got to be a lot of documents.
So one of the things, they have 22 billion documents.
Wow.
So one of the things on my list of 15 things for young people to learn leadership is to study history. because I believe that the past is prologue. Believe it or not, leaders 1,000 years ago were having the same emotions, positive and negative, that we do today.
Yeah.
They
were people.
and the way they behaved is actually not crazy or whatever. When you understand the world they lived in, you could see why they behaved what they did. And you can see what great leaders did right and what poor leaders did wrong. Picking one is hard for me because I love history. I'm a big student of history, but I will say Winston Churchill.
Okay.
And Winston Churchill is a great example. Most great leaders are not great at everything. They need to find their situation where their strengths really come to bear. You know, in World War II, you had George Patton. Okay, Patton had a lot of faults, but boy, if you needed someone to fight and lead, he was the man.
He was the guy for that job.
And he delivered many, many times. Navy had its own Nimitz and Bull Halsey, and also in World War II. Okay. Politically, Churchill was, I think, the perfect guy. And I'm going to describe one situation that I recommend to everyone. There's a movie called The Desperate Hours. Came out in 2017. It's a story of Churchill when the Nazis have now basically conquered Europe, and his cabinet wants him to sue for peace, sign a peace treaty. And he really, deep down inside, doesn't want to.
Okay.
And the star is Gary Oldman, who won the Academy Award for Best Actor for that movie. And there's near the end, the last 40 minutes, and I've made a lot of movies, as you know, so I think I can appreciate great movie making. The last 40 minutes are some of the best ever made. And the scene that I recommend to everyone, the whole movie, but
I'll watch it this weekend,
is so he's really conflicted. Everyone is saying sue for peace, and he doesn't want it. He's a fighter. Okay. Churchill is definitely a fighter. And so he's in his limo going through the crowded London. He's passing the underground, the subway, and he suddenly leaps out of the car. His driver's, "Where are you going?" And he goes down in the underground, gets on the subway car. The car is completely full, shoulder to shoulder, with a diversity of people, color, age, female, male. You could tell. It's all mixed. People in fancy suits, workmen with tools, everybody. And he starts talking, and they're like, "Is that Churchill?" You know? And he finally says to them, "What would you do? Do you want to fight, or should we sue for peace?" And the whole car goes, "What are you talking about? Fight. Of course." So I'm sorry to say this actually never happened, but it's still great piece of
It's not
movement.
part of real
I had to go
history.
check. It was so
Okay.
amazing. I wanted to know for sure. And so he gets off at Westminster, a subway stop where the Parliament is. He goes upstairs. He tells his cabinet, we're going to fight, and they're all against him. Just about all of them. He goes to the floor of the Commons of Parliament.
Now, this part of it's real history.
Now it's real.
Okay.
And it's real that they were encouraging him to stay. That all part is real. And he gets wound up, and he gives in 12 minutes, arguably the greatest single speech in human history to me. You may have heard of Churchill's "We'll fight them on the beaches" speech.
Yes.
If you haven't, I highly recommend. It's only 12 minutes. He goes off. "We'll never give in. We'll never this, and we'll fight them on the beaches. We'll fight them in the streets. We'll fight whatever it takes. We will fight. We will never give up." And in 12 minutes, he convinces the entire British Empire to follow him. In 12 minutes, I still get goosebumps when I hear the speech.
Yeah, you just got them now. Yeah.
You got 12 minutes. That's what, it doesn't take much time. And it may sound strange now. It was 1940 that this happened. But may sound a little strange, but boy, you got to see through it. This is an entire British Empire. You know, it was the largest, if you will, country in the world back then. They're all convinced to fight. And they do. And he was a great leader, the perfect guy to go through 5 years of war as a leader, and then get voted out of office as soon as the war was over, by the way. I don't know. So, but he found his niche. And maybe I found my niche with turnarounds. You found your niche with this?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. It sounds like
I hope so, or I wasted a whole lot of time.
I don't think you don't strike me as someone's going to waste any time. I'll ask the people in the room here later on what they think. But yep,
this has been great. Could talk to you for hours, Peter. Thanks for doing it.
All right.
And hey, everyone, make sure to check out his book, Superhero Leadership. It's out now, right?
Yes.
A couple weeks. So
yep.
Looking forward
you
to
go to Amazon. You can get it off of Amazon.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you want more PodCrash in your life, which of course you do, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Catch you next time.